What's up, YouTube Nation? I'm the Coffee Bean GM, and this is going to be a simple Q&A sort of video about a system and a setting called the Astounding Heroes, the Negative Green, that I am creating and building. This project is going to be done through Left Hand Publishing, which is a small publishing group. Myself, Czech Shikov, and Rob Barkley are all a part of it. Each of us do our own thing. So Rob's working on his own area that he's doing on. Czech is working on a section, and this is my project within this. We're going to bounce ideas off each other and work together and build together and do everything, but each of us has our own little separate baby to tend to, per se. So one of the things I wanted to do is start getting people to bring in questions, both to kind of give people some information about what the system and the setting is, and hopefully build up a little bit of hype and interest in the setting, as well as get myself motivated to get some of this, all these notes and these brainstorming things that I have on notebooks, which are behind me on the table, and try to get them into the media, get them on videos, get them down onto documents on the computer, and start building this rule book and the setting book and everything. And, you know, to help motivate me in doing that, I threw a simple little post up over on Facebook to a couple different groups, asking for people to ask some questions and inquire about the system and the setting of Astounding Heroes of the Negative Green. So what I'm going to do, and right now I have 4 questions. I got a few more on there, but I'm only going to touch on 4 of them here. And go through, read off the question, and answer it. I'm going to try not to ramble too much and try to keep it short and sweet the best I can. But whenever you have a project like this, it's hard not to go off on a little bit of a tangent in different directions in order to tie everything together. So just bear with me a little bit. And if this creates more questions or you have other questions that you're interested in, again, post them down in the comments below and I'll dig them out for future use, or over on Facebook or whatever. You can contact me however you like. So without further ado, let's get to this. So Nick over on the OSG on Facebook asked a couple of questions. This first one, this is, are these action cards real cards? How would you replicate them for online play, specifically over Google Hangouts and not a virtual tabletop? So to give a little background information about this question, Astounding Heroes, the Negative Green, uses what's called a card-based initiative combat. So every character has, you start out with 1 action card, but as you advance, it goes up to level 10. As you advance to different levels, you get more action cards. These action cards are taken, put into a pile of cards, and then when combat breaks or initiative starts, or a scene starts that uses an initiative for the setup, you take all those cards, shuffle them all up, you flip the first card, and that person goes. You flip the next card, and that person goes. You flip the third card, and that person goes, and so on and so forth until you get to the bottom of the deck. 1 stack of cards, of initiative cards, that whole stack is considered a round. Each action that you take is a turn or an action. So, as I said, a level 1 character only has 1 action card. So if you have 4 players, that's going to have 4 action cards in the initiative deck, and it'll have whatever action cards are included with hazards around them, be it creatures, atmospheric, or whatever else might need an initiative card, are all put into that deck. It's all shuffled up, and you start to play the initiative. Excuse me. So to answer his first question, are these action cards real cards? Yes, they are. And actually, I have a set right here. As we can see, it's upside down, though. So that one right there is a gorilla. So, you know, in this case, I have my initiative deck. This is obviously not as big as they are, but this is just an example. I would flip that first card if it was all shuffled up. You can see it says bomb. That would be the bomb action card that would go. I'll do whatever that bomb does. It takes its action, and then go on to the next card. It comes up, bomb again. Unfortunately, whoever has this is going to be getting bombed the hell out of, and that's bad luck for them. But that's the basic concept. And you would go down through this whole entire deck, and once you get to the bottom, that is 1 round of actions. Early gameplay, your level 1, 2, 3, stuff like that, has a very small initiative deck because everybody only has 1, maybe 2 actions. Whereas when you get to a level 10, and everybody has 4 action cards at that point that are in this deck. So if you have 4 players, that's already 16 cards that are in this deck. On top of that, you would have the enemy cards and other ones. So the rounds in the beginning of the game are faster, much quicker paced. It gets people interested, but also used to how the combat setup. It's not overwhelming. There's only a few cards in there, and the rounds go quickly, and they go right through. Whereas when you get later on into the game, combat becomes a bit more rough. There's a lot more action cards in here, and it's built this way on purpose. So 1 round in a later game, you have a lot of other abilities and spells, which are called fusions in this game, and other things that work off of a round. So later on, your powers that last for a round or whatever are much more powerful because the round is much more longer and you can do a lot more things compared to the early game. But more of that will come in when I talk about fusions later on. So it is designed that way for a reason. And so far, out of all the playtesting I've done, this has worked like a charm. A little bit of background on this. Back in right around 2001, 2002, I was part of a team that created a miniature war game. And we used an action-based setup just like this, where each miniature had its own card. When you drew that miniature's card, it took its action and went on through. And I always wanted to port that over to an RPG. So that is what I did. There's a few little kinks here and there and things that are working out, but ultimately it has worked very well. Perhaps some of the others who have played test in this or whatever could give a little bit of feedback as well, but overall, very well. So how would I replicate this for online playing? So I know you said not to mention the whole virtual tabletop, but just as a side note, I don't know anything about Fantasy Grounds really to know if they can do it, but I do know that Roll20 Virtual Tabletop does have a card-based application or whatever it's called in that setup, but it actually has a deck of cards in there. You can make your own cards, you can upload your own pictures, and you can do your own thing with those cards, being handed them out, flipping them over, creating decks or whatever the case might be. Back when I did the miniature game years ago, I used that setup and it worked perfectly well. I know since then, Roll20's done a lot more. I've seen other people do things with the cards there, and it does work very well. I don't know exactly what goes into using that card setup anymore, but it does work for those that like that Roll20 aspect of the virtual tabletops. Myself, I always use Google Hangouts. I think a lot of the people that I game with use Google Hangouts. So for that aside, for those games that I've run and such, I did exactly what I did right now. So I get everybody's cards ready ahead of time. Everything's all set to go. When combat breaks, I shuffle in all the cards that are required, and I just simply draw them, hold them up for the people to read, and we kind of go on through the combat, right down through the list. That way, everybody knows who's up, what's going on, and where they're at. If they ever have a question about how many cards are in the discard deck or how many cards are in the initiative pile or this or that, then they simply ask, and I let them know. It's worked out very well. There are a few little hiccups here and there that could be a bit of a pain. Every character has abilities called card manipulations, and it allows them to, for example, take the top 3 cards, look at them, and place them back in any order. So in that case, I simply draw the top 3 cards. I tell them it's the bomb, and a scientist. They tell me what format they want it in, and then I put them back on the deck. So every card that is revealed within the deck, be it the top cards, middle cards, bottom cards, whatever the case might be, however they do it, is always flipped over. So that way, as I have my initiative deck sitting there, I know that the scientist is up first. When other things call upon somebody to search randomly through the initiative deck or do something, you use the cards that are not flipped over because they do not know what they are, and thus it's random. Now, as you get down smaller through the deck and get less cards, they might know who's left in there, what's left, all the way down to the very bottom to what the last card might be. And that is part of the strategy of the card manipulation abilities. So it allows the players to get a little bit of an advantage edge on when they go and how they go and who's going elsewhere around them in the initiative. So that's the basics on the card initiative, or the combat. It is used for combat mostly, but there are other certain situations like adrenaline scenes and things like that. For example, in this bomb, there's a bomb scene when the characters have to locate the bomb, disarm figure out how the bomb works, and then disarming the bomb. And as they're trying to do that, the bomb's ticking down, and that's what those bomb cards were. So while it wasn't exactly a combat against other foes, it was sort of a adrenaline scene or a combat against the bomb per se, and it's run through this system. And again, things like the card manipulations fit into that again because they can see who's going and push that bomb down so they have more time potentially. So that is the basics of that. So yes, they are actual cards. Another note that I mention is when I start coming up with adventures and different things of the system, the cards for things like your enemies and your bombs and stuff, these are just simple whiteboard cards. You can order them, I think, for like $6 on Amazon, and they're just dry erase marker that I put on there and make them. But I do have an outline for actual cards that'll have all of the monster information, the stats, and everything right on the card. So when the GM takes it and flips it over, all of that information is right there, and they can do whatever needed to and set it aside. When you order things like adventures and stuff, it'll come with all the initiative cards that you need for that adventure already set up into the deck and ready to go. This double is one to be able to run that adventure easily, but two, it gives people, GMs particularly, who are running games and stuff, to build a pile of decks of different monsters and everything. So instead of opening up a book and looking through pages and pulling this there or having books on the tables, they can simply go through their deck of cards of all the ones they have, pick out the monsters they want, and use them. Another thing that they could do is just keep, for example, this is the gorilla, keep that card in front of them with all the stats and simply use whiteboard cards within the deck itself so that they just have to refer to their one card. Oh, geez. And I'm throwing them everywhere. So that's the basic on the card initiative deck.